Welcome back. All right, so the 2024 NHL entry draft is nearly upon us. As such, we're going to take a look at the draft. Now, I like to do a mock draft. Last year I did 1 through 16. This year I'm doing 1 through 28. I could have gone to 30, but man, once you get into the early 20s, it really is guesswork. And honestly, the guesswork kind of starts at 2. So I've done videos of 10 prospects that are available on this channel. I'll add this to that playlist. But other prospect videos are possible after the draft. At this point, though, the focus is going to be on the Stanley Cup, the road to the draft, and all that fun stuff. But yeah, so we'll see how things go. Maybe after the draft is done, I'll look at players drafted in the first round where they went and this kind of thing. But yeah, it's fun to do a mock draft, and I looked at a few mock drafts, and it really is all over the place. Two players who are mentioned as being the best in a category in the Elite Prospects Handbook, Yearbook, which I recommend. I do have a paid subscription to them. Right out of my own pocket, I pay for it, and it is a good resource to look at the draft picks, who they are, and where they're likely to be projected. So when I do this, I will be also including who finished at the top of certain categories according to scouts that talk to elite prospects. Two guys who finished at the top of certain categories are not in the top 28, so I'm going to talk about them for a moment. Cole Baudouin was seen as the one that has the best motor in this year's draft class. Stian Solberg is seen as the hardest hitter in this year's draft class. Again, I do not have them in my top 28. They are both seen as players who could potentially be in the top 28. And so, yeah, here we are. All right, starting off at 1, and one of the worst kept secrets in the draft. I'll put this position as well. Keeping in mind that with forwards, sometimes you get information that's kind of, it contradicts. Some of them are listed as centers, some of them are listed as wingers. Some guys that get listed as centers play on the wing, but in Celebrini's case, he's a center. 6 feet tall, 190 pounds. And best case scenario, according to the Hockey News, is Pettersson, Elias Pettersson in Vancouver. And again, the whole best case scenario thing, I'm not a huge fan of, but it does tell you a little bit about their game. Celebrini, I think the ceiling might be a little bit higher for him. That being said, he's also listed as the best straight line skater in this year's draft. He's also seen as having the highest floor amongst players, meaning that at the very worst, he's still going to be a very good player in the National Hockey League. He's seen as the best transition forward and also as the best two-way forward in this year's draft class. So a lot of reason to think he's going to go number 1. Number 2, and this was number 2 when I did my video earlier, and I know that there's an expectation it could be a defenseman here, but I think Ivan Demidov, it's too good. He's too good. He's a right wing / center. The best case scenario, again, according to the Hockey News, is Mitch Marner. And in terms of Demidov, when you look at finishing at the top of categories, he's got a bunch with elite prospects. Best hands, best vision, the highest ceiling of any player, meaning that Celebrini at his worst is going to be great. But if every player reaches that highest ceiling, Demidov could end up being seen as the best of this year's draft class. Also the best offensive forward. So while Celebrini is seen as the best transition forward and two-way forward, Demidov is seen as being the best offensive forward in this year's draft class. So again, there's a reason that I have him going at number 2. And I honestly, I came into this thinking, okay, Chicago's got to draft a defenseman, right? And I couldn't do it. That being said, 3rd, going to Anaheim. And this is where I had Lev Shunov being drafted. When I was doing the videos on the prospects, I wore a Ducks jersey for Lev Shunov, and I think that's what's going to happen. I'd be very surprised if Lev Shunov doesn't end up going to Anaheim. And I'm pronouncing it as many different ways as possible because you never know it's going to get changed and all that. Lev Shunov seems to be the way most are pronouncing it, but Lev Shunov is probably going to end up being the way that we'll pronounce it 5-10 years from now. Who knows? But yeah, I think at 3, because he's 6'2", 209 pounds. The best case scenario, according to the Hockey News, Jacob Chychrun. I disagree. I think the best case scenario is a little bit higher than Chychrun. I say that as no offense to Chychrun, but number 3 in this year's draft class, probably going to be a little bit better in that category. Lev Shunov did not finish at the top of any of the categories that elite prospects had for defensemen, but he was very prominent. And again, I have him at number 3. Number 4, and it's another center going to Columbus for the same reason that when I was doing the videos on the prospects, I had him going to Columbus. Just personally, I think Caden Lindstrom to Columbus makes a ton of sense. Then you have him and Fantilli as your 2 centers going forward. His high end is his best case scenario. It's seen as being Mikko Rantanen. So he's a center, and he's seen as having hands like Rantanen. He is also seen as the best power forward out of this draft class. So good hands, scorer, power forward. Those guys don't stay on the draft board for very long. They're gone pretty quickly. So this is one of those examples where, yes, you could have defensemen from 3 through 8 in this year's draft, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think Lindstrom's going to end up going 4th. Again, we'll see what happens in a couple of weeks' time. Number 5, initially I had Sam Dickinson going to Montreal. That was what I wore for the Sam Dickinson video. But looking it all over, I don't think that's how it's going to turn out, but we'll see. Maybe I'm going to be right. I still have a defenseman, though, going there. While Lindstrom is 6'4", 216 pounds. Levshinov is 6'2", 209 pounds. Saleyev is 6'7", 207 pounds. Big guy. So that being said, his best case scenario, it's got written down as Hedman. I mean, if the offense is well beyond what's being projected for him, but Saleyev, not really seen as having that level of offense. He's also listed as the best neutral zone defenseman in this year's draft and the best shutdown defenseman in this year's draft, again, according to Elite Prospects. So Montreal would do pretty well if they drafted him. They have a very good blue line in Montreal. They have a lot of good young players coming. If they draft another defenseman, I know there's going to be those in Montreal that aren't happy. But just personally, I do think Saleyev, I can't see him falling lower. A guy's 6'7", 6'7" defensemen who have skill and are seen as really, really good shutdown players. They don't last that long on the draft board either. At number 6, and the same one that I had a prospect video going there, I don't see Parake going late. Parake has ridiculous offense to his game. Best case scenario, again, according to the Hockey News, Brent Burns. Burns has had a very good career as an offensive defenseman. And with the goals he put up, not a surprise that, according to Elite Prospects, he's seen as the best offensive defenseman in this draft class. So for Utah, brand new team to the NHL, drafting Parake might make a lot of sense. We shall see, but it's going to be fun to have Utah at the draft and see what their generic-ish jerseys are going to look like for year 1. I'm kind of hoping that even though it's just going to be Utah, that they might have some fun with it, something a little more than just generic. I'm picturing just black with Utah and white writing, and then the away jersey being just a plain white jersey with Utah and black writing. I really hope I'm wrong. I hope there's something to it, but Parake may very well be wearing that jersey. At number 7, a center going to the Ottawa Senators. I spelled that wrong, didn't I? I sure did. I want to put an E. Berkeley, if you watch this, could you put an extra E in your first name? That'd be great. And not only that, but Catton, it might be kind of hard for people to remember. If you could just change your name to Berkeley Cotton and spell it with an E before the Y at the end, that'd be great. Make things a lot easier. But Berkeley Catton, who initially I had going 7th overall. I still have going 7th overall. Going to Ottawa, so I haven't changed my mind on that. Best case scenario, again, according to the draft preview guide of the Hockey News, is Sebastian Aho. So we'll see if that, in fact, becomes the case. Did he finish at the top of any of these categories? No, but I did see Catton mentioned in a few. So Berkeley Catton stands 5'11", 163 pounds being his weight. He might need to add some weight to get up to the NHL. But it's been mentioned before, there's other players who reached the NHL that their weight wasn't seen as being enough. So we'll see how long he is in the system for Ottawa before he makes his way up to the main roster. Number 8. So Seattle drafting here. It is going to be a defenseman. I had them drafting Saleyev. But in doing this draft here, this is where Sam Dickinson lands. Sam Dickinson, who Let me go ahead and look at the stats here. Stands 6'3". He's 194 pounds. Best case scenario, Matthias Ekholm. Ekholm's been fantastic throughout the playoffs. At the time I'm recording this, Edmonton's down 2-0 in the final. I don't put that on Ekholm. Ekholm's been great. If Dickinson reaches that potential, I think people are going to be happy. And Dickinson not leading in any of the categories that were listed by Elite Prospects. But again, they have plenty of information on him. Their draft book is like hundreds of pages. So you'll have enough information that if you read it from front to back, it'll be July. You'll be like, I missed the draft, but I regret nothing. Number 9, and I'm apologizing straight up because it does feel like this would make a lot of sense. Yeah, I wore Flames for THG, and here we are in THG. I have going to Calgary. Best case scenario, according to the Hockey News, Brandon Hagel. Why didn't they put Jerome McGinley? It was right there. But anyways, yeah, Hagel, if that's your best case scenario. I like Hagel a lot. I love his compete. And Iginla's said to have compete because his name's Iginla. He kind of has to. Again, he's one that's not leading in any of the categories on Elite Prospects. And depending on your draft lists, I've seen him as high as like 6th or 7th. And I've seen him as low as in the teens. So really, it does kind of go all over the place. It's going to depend on where Flames management has him, but it'd be tough not to go with Iginla, wouldn't it? I mean, if you're the Flames management, it would make some sense. It's not like it's nepotism either. It's not like Iginla's not the kind of forward that they need at this point. So we'll see. Number 10, going to New Jersey, and it's the same one who I had, I wore Devils jersey for this. So again, Zeev Buium. So Buium, a defenseman who is seen as being potentially Devon Taves if he reaches his ceiling. So again, best case scenario from the Hockey News, Devon Taves. That's some pretty heady competition right there. So yeah, I have Buium going to New Jersey. He is seen as the best transition defenseman in this draft. So transition plays are really, really important. New Jersey's a team with a lot of speed. They're dangerous in transition. You add a transition blue liner to a team that's already got Luke Hughes, and once they got a healthy Dougie Hamilton back there, that's a pretty good blue line for a team that needs that. So we're into number 11. Number 11, a center going to the Buffalo Sabres. Consta Helenius. Love that name. Consta Helenius. His best case scenario, Braden Point. Helenius not on the list of players who are at the top of any one category, but he is pretty universally seen as a player who should go between 10 and 15 that I saw. Again, we'll see if that's where he ends up. But Helenius going to Buffalo. Buffalo, no stranger to European players over the years. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Number 12 going to Philadelphia. And I had to look this one up to make sure I was gonna pronounce it correctly. So I have the Flyers taking a right winger at 12, and it is Bennett Beckett. See, be easier if he just changed his first name to Bennett. That'd be great, and then he could play with Sam Bennett. I don't know. I'll just blame it on being old. I can blame everything on being old. It's great because I'm old. But Barrett Seneca, right winger. Who stands at 6'2", 181. Consta Helenius is 5'11", 181 pounds. And I don't think I gave you Buium's size either, 6 foot, 183 pounds. Whereas Iginla, 6 foot, 185 pounds. Now, getting back to Seneca, I had to make sure I was going to pronounce that correctly, because I look at that and I go, so Seneca? Nope, Seneca. So Beckett Seneca is, again, one of those players that's seen as being in that teen range. I have him going at 12 to the Philadelphia Flyers. Best case scenario, Nazem Kadri. So we're now into players where, again, if a guy reaches Kadri level and he's number 12 in the draft, I think you take that as being a win. In this case, if you're the Philadelphia Flyers. All right, number 13, a blue liner for Minnesota. Make sure I get the name right. That'd be nice if I can get that right out of the gate. Another guy with a first name that can be a last name. But with the name Carter Yaremchuk, I think you have to be a hockey player. Carter Yaremchuk, you're playing hockey. It's what you have to do with that name. But again, the defenseman going to Minnesota. Best case scenario, Brandon Montour. He is 6'3", 194 pounds, so that ticks a lot of boxes. Defensemen have to be 6 feet and taller. In general, to be high prospects with the National Hockey League, there are exceptions, but definitely not a ton. And when you look at the defensemen in this draft class, there are some guys over 6 feet tall, and basically all of them are at least 6 feet tall on this page, I think, when it comes to the defensemen. So yeah, Yaremchuk goes to Minnesota in this draft. Number 14. And I've seen people asking what's happened with this guy, so I will talk about him. So Cole Yzerman. And Cole can be a last name as well, of course. Cole Yzerman was seen as a really top-notch prospect coming into this year's draft, potentially being right behind Celebrini. So what happened? And I've seen people asking what happened. Yzerman does have the best shot, according to Elite Prospects, where they've asked the scouts. But Yzerman was seen as kind of maybe being a bit selfish during the season. Not me saying it, scouts saying it, that he was obsessed with setting a record for goals in the league he was playing in, USHL, I believe. And while he does set a record, he was seen as being so focused on the goal scoring that it affected the rest of his game. So he's an excellent offensive player. Again, best shot in the draft, but it's seen as that's what he has, and now he has to work on the rest of his game. And so that's caused him to drop behind other players who made greater strides in this draft class. But it also means if San Jose gets Yzerman, I got to be careful because it's getting way too close to Yzerman here, right? But if they draft Yzerman, imagine if Yzerman drafts Yzerman at 15. But yeah, Cole Yzerman is seen as, being the best shot, and then Celebrini the best all-around player. Center, left winger, along with Will Smith having been signed to his entry-level contract. You're building up that forward depth for San Jose really, really quickly. Because again, Yzerman dropped because he's got a great shot, but not much else that's progressed as well as everybody else. But you can fix that, right? With the right coaching, you can fix that. And so he could be a steal at 14. But for Detroit fans that want to see Yzerman drafted by Yzerman, I don't have an answer for that. I apologize vehemently, because that would kind of be perfect. If Yzerman goes up there and goes, yeah, I'm drafting Yzerman, because look at his name. It's so close to mine. And just phonetically sounds very similar. All right. Number 15. So now going to Detroit. It is a forward. Liam Greentree. And when I see a hockey player named Liam, I immediately think of Shoresy. But yeah, Greentree going 15th to them. He is seen as being potentially an Alexis Lafreniere at his best. For Yzerman, Brock Besser is the one they listed as the one that would be best case scenario would be Besser. Again, take all of that with a grain of salt. I just thought it would be fun to include in this video. But yeah, I have Greentree going at 15. At 16, this one I had to look at a couple of times because, yeah, this one's a bit. All right, so Michael's the first name. I can do this. No, I can't. No, I screwed it up. Totally tried to cover it up, but you can tell. Michael Branzeg Nygaard. That's a great name. It's a great name. Right winger, and best case scenario, Timo Meier for him. So St. Louis to getting somebody there who could potentially be a Timo Meier type. That'd be fantastic. And again, I'm looking at the list of players. Let me see if I'm going to have to look at that list again. No, the list in terms of the leaders in certain categories for elite prospects, I've exhausted that. It's all the players who've already been taken. So I can stop looking at that part of the page. Branzig Nygaard is 6'1", 198 pounds. Interestingly enough, Yzerman's 6', 196 pounds. Liam Greentree, 6'2", 198 pounds. When you get them all back to back like that, you can see there's a certain size and weight that basically, if you're going to be a hockey player, this works. And yeah, they're all very, very similar, which is part of the reason why I'm not necessarily going through it as much as I should be, and I apologize for that. Number 17, going to Washington, going with a defenseman here. Adam Yurchek. So Adam Yurchek, best case scenario for him is Gustav Forsling. And ask any Florida fan, or don't, just walk up to a Florida fan and go hi. And one of the first things you're going to hear is, isn't Gustav Forsling fantastic? Like, you could be in a situation where you're on a train track, your car's kind of stalled out, you're trying to get off, but Florida fan gets out of their car and is trying to help you push your car off the train tracks and be like, man, that's great. That was a close call. Did you see Gustav Forsling this year? The guy's great. So anyways, if Yurchek turns into Forsling, Florida fans are going to want him, but Washington would be quite happy with Yurchek if he developed that way. He's 6'2". He's only 168 pounds. So does need to add a little bit of weight, I would think, to play in the NHL, especially as a defenseman, but I have Yurchek going at 20. Then we have, from the New York Islanders, Chicago as the number 18 draft pick. I have them adding another forward because they need forwards. Let's be honest here, right? You're going to pull yourself out of this rebuild. It helps to have as many forwards as possible. So Trevor Connolly being picked up by Chicago at 18. That's where I have him going. Best case scenario, again, according to the Hockey News, Kevin Fiala, 30 goal scorer, about a point per game player. That's pretty good projection right there. And again, this means that they would be taking Demidov, Connolly, according to my draft, 2 forwards for Chicago. And Chicago could have a ridiculously talented team within the next 4 to 5 years. A lot of really good young players, and then it's a matter of building it up from there. Connolly, I don't see anything else there that I need. All right, 6'1", 161 pounds for Connolly. But again, that might be part of the reason why he's farther down, right? Because he needs to add more weight than that guy does. Sometimes adding the player that, or drafting the player that the scouts aren't quite as sold on for whatever reasons, you can actually get yourself a steal that way, especially when it's size related. Number 19, and going to Vegas, center. Sasha Boisvert. A name I've heard in NHL circles before, going way, way back. Charlie Coyle is listed as the best case scenario by the Hockey News. He is 6'2", 179 pounds. So as a center, I think Vegas could definitely use drafting a forward. I don't know if Vegas keeps the pick, because Vegas is known for trading their first round draft picks. I don't know if anybody knows this, but they are very often a team that will sacrifice a little bit of future looking for present success. And so far, it's worked out pretty well for Vegas. So we'll see how many of these picks are actually made by these teams. There's always the chance that trades could happen. If trades happen between now and draft day, I'm not going to make a brand new draft. It's not going to happen. Number 20 on the list, left winger going to the New York Islanders. This is a pick that was Tampa Bay's, and it was traded to the Islanders via the Chicago Blackhawks. And going here, I have Ivan Chernyshov. So in his case, he is seen as Nichushkin as a best case scenario. I'm guessing it's the one that's been playing in Colorado and has scored a ton of goals, not the one in Dallas that was struggling with that. But Chernyshov, seen as being one of those players that could very well become Nichushkin. 6'2", 196 pounds. He has the NHL projectable size already. And yeah, the Islanders are going to need to add some youth at some point. So why not draft somebody who, he may not come over and play right away, but you might be getting a pretty darn good player at number 20. Number 21, the LA Kings drafting. And a center. That's where I'm going with LA. Michael Hage. Hage, I'd look that one up too and see if it was Hagee, or Hage. It's Hage. Best case scenario for him is Jonathan Marchessault. Again, he's a center. He is 6'1", 190 pounds. So Hage going to the LA Kings. To Nashville. Now this is where I'm expecting to see somebody moving up, and I was like, okay. So coming out of the combine, the older you get, the harder it is to speak and write at the same time. But Jet Luchenko had an amazing combine. Nashville is not shy about not going off the board here, but picking somebody who other teams might be willing to pass on. Nashville is usually pretty good at picking guys that we might look at the time and say, really there? And then later on we go, actually, you know what? They were smart. I think Luchenko, a center. Luchenko is 5'11", 183 pounds, but he's very strong, and he's got a lot of really good numbers coming out of the combine. And I heard he interviewed pretty well too. So I could see Luchenko going as high as 22. I could also see him going at 32, dropping out of the first round. But just me for my draft here, I'm taking him at 22. 23, going to Toronto. Leaf fans all perk up. I have them taking a forward. So now they hit last year. Easton Cowan looks like he's going to be great. So drafting at 23rd, I have Andrew Basha going to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Best case scenario, according to the Hockey News, Seth Jarvis. And initially I thought it said Seth Jones, and I'm like, but he's a forward. Are they saying Seth Jones is a forward? There are some nodding right now hearing that. But yeah, Basha, best case scenario, Seth Jarvis. Oh, and I'm going to Toronto. That was the draft pick they traded in the Marlowe trade. Anyway, I'm going to keep it. I apologize. I'm not intentionally trying to troll with all this. It's just, you have all these names on the paper and everything. Anyways, Basha's 6 feet tall, 185 pounds. At 24, going to Colorado, a defenseman. Now, this is an interesting one because Aaron Kiviharju, he is all over the place. He may end up dropping. Again, we'll see what happens. But there were enough that had him high up. And this is where, again, the best case scenario, according to the Hockey News, is Sean Durzi. He's 5'10", 172 pounds. Being a defenseman below 6 feet tall could cause him to drop. We'll see. But yeah, I have Kiviharju going at 24th to the Colorado Avalanche. At 25th, going to Ottawa, it's another forward. So this is the pick they got from Boston via the Detroit Red Wings. So a right winger going to Ottawa. And best case scenario for Ryder Ritchie is Dave Perron. So Dave Perron, best case scenario for Ryder Ritchie. With Ryder Ritchie, this is where I wish there was a team that had a city name that starts with R. Like it's right there. Roanoke's Ryder Ritchie. Just work. We don't have a team in Roanoke. I'll have to fix that. But he's 6 feet tall, 174 pounds. So again, you're going to get guys who might be on the lighter side later on in the draft. And that's where I have Ritchie going as 25th. At 26th, another forward going to Montreal. So this is from Winnipeg. This is in the Sean Monahan trade. And it is Emil Hemming. And Hemming as well, I saw in various places on draft lists, wherever he may go early in the second round. I have Montreal taking him. I mean, they have Emil Heineman, right? Heineman's in the Montreal organization. So there you go, a couple of Emils. Why not? What's wrong with that? Carolina, for defense, I just figure, they do like to have as many defensemen in Carolina's organization as possible. Plus, they could be losing Pesce. They could be losing Chatfield. You might want to replenish your numbers, and Charlie Ellick could absolutely do that for them. Best case scenario, Esa Lindell. Lindell, a very good defenseman for Dallas, and then seeing that, I was like, well, that makes some sense. He's also 6'3", 198 pounds. So who's number 28? Going to Calgary. And the best case scenario for him is Blake Coleman. So, again, not intentional. But, and he plays both wings. I'm just thinking, like, Coleman's played both wings, hasn't he? Nikita. Artemanov. So, Artemanov, who, again, best case scenario, Blake Coleman. He stands 5'11", 187 pounds. And again, according to my listing, he plays both wings. So there you go. About a half an hour going through and picks 1 through 28. I know this is not going to work. It could be broken by the time we reach pick number 2. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.